Hey, what's up, guys? Want to hop on here real quick. I've been kind of hanging out in the shadows last week and a half, listening to, reading all the things about Notre Dame football and the college football playoff. And yeah, of course, I've had opinions about it. I mean, there's no question. Notre Dame's my squad, but I'm really mostly coming to you today as a sports fan in general. I wanted to just offer my piece, offer my opinion on the matter. Not that anyone specifically asked for it on a global level, but I've had several conversations with people in person and over the phone, and just figured I'd jump on here and just share my thoughts, feelings about some of the things that have transpired, especially since the final rankings came out yesterday. So, my first global statement is that the CFP rankings have been a joke. It's been widespread and just kind of all over the place. Some of the jumps don't make any sense. Some of them have remained the same when maybe they should have risen or fallen, and it really doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the process. As Notre Dame has been in the top 12 of every single ranking, and still is. They're, I believe, number 12 on this ranking. But because of the way that the system works, number 20 and number 24, Tulane and JMU, land spots ahead of the 12th spot, which is wild, right? And so you're saying, hey, I'm going to rank you 24th out of 25, but we're going to count you as one of the top 12 teams based on the fact that you won your conference championship, even though there are 12 other teams ahead of you in ranking. I think is wild, and I'll get to a little bit later about what I think would be a more suitable selection process for the CFP. More notably, though, Notre Dame has been ahead of Miami in every single ranking, like every ranking that's come out. Was it after week 7 that the ranks come out? It's crazy that Notre Dame has been ahead of them in every single ranking, every single time until we wake up yesterday and suddenly Miami is ahead of Notre Dame. And yes, there is a head-to-head there. Fine, I'll give you that. Notre Dame lost 2 games this season. They lost 2 games early, and they lost 2 games to what ended up being 2 top 10 teams. And so while I don't celebrate those losses, they're in the L column. So I'm not going to sit here and try to quantify saying, oh, well, CJ Carr was a freshman quarterback, his very first start, and yada, yada, yada. That stuff's all cool, but that doesn't matter when it comes to a loss. We played Miami and Texas A&M, and we lost to Miami and Texas A&M. It's important to note, though, that we lost to both those teams, 2 top 10 teams, by less than a field goal or less for either team. 3 points Miami, 1 point Texas A&M. I won't even get into some of the questionable calls and things like that. Again, those games are done. They're in the loss column. I'm not looking to relive the past. However, Miami is also a 2-loss team, and they didn't lose in the beginning of the season. They lost toward the end of the season to unranked teams who are not in the top 25. And that has to mean something, right? So there's a slump. And so in traditional schooling, you have a 9-week grading period. 9 weeks. If you're going to flunk a test, you better flunk that test early in the 9 weeks and give yourself a chance to recoup your GPA. Losing a game or flunking a test in week 7 or 8 of the 9-week grading period, and then coming back and saying, well, I aced the first test, right? It doesn't mean anything. That first test doesn't carry you through the entire 9 weeks. You have to, and it proves that there's a slump in your program, right? Notre Dame did not have a slump, right? They lost their first couple games. If that's the slump, that's their slump. And it was close, and they didn't perform at a level that I was proud of, but they played well overall. And they just continue to get better. And every week, they got better. It was kind of reminiscent of last year when we lost to NIU of all teams, right? But it was motivation to get better. It was that sour taste in the mouth to continue to dog it out and just become a better program. And they've done that. I think almost every player in every position has done that. And Miami proved that wasn't the case for them by dropping 2 games late in the season to a 4 and 5 loss team um, doesn't prove that the team has gotten better. They hit a slump, they hit a stall. I'm not saying they're a bad program, just saying that by any metric, by any data, I would not have put them above Notre Dame as an objective sports fan. Take out the fact that Notre Dame and Miami have history. Take out the fact that I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm a sports fan first. I'm a sports fan who happens to love Notre Dame football, right? If Notre Dame sucked, I would say we suck this year. We don't deserve to be in the championship or playoffs. I can't really say that about this year. I mean, the question for me is, if Miami was ahead of Notre Dame, why weren't they ranked higher earlier in any of the CFP rankings, right? I listened to the committee chairman, whatever his name was, talk about the fact that, well, we didn't consider head to head until they were close. Like, why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you use all the data and all the metrics? Why would you wait until you have an ace in the hole to, it's like sitting on, the ace of spades and reneging, right, in a game of spades. You've been sitting on this the entire time, and you had an opportunity to take books with this earlier, but you decided to wait and play it at the very last second. When almost, at least in this analogy, it doesn't matter, right? So I just don't understand how and why that Miami jumped Notre Dame if both the teams sat at home on Saturday. Both the team were sitting around watching the conference championship games. No one played, so there was no additional data to consider. So why, with no additional data, was there movement between Miami and Notre Dame, right? Nothing changed. Notre Dame got played. The goal line was moved in the middle of the night. It's like you're in a final drive of a game, and it's 4th and 10. It's 4-down territory. We're going for it. It's 4th and 10. We get 11 yards on our play to earn a first down, only for the ref to say, "Oh, my bad. It was actually 4th and 15. You're 4 yards short." It's wild, to say the least. It doesn't make any sense. And I felt the same way about Florida State a couple years ago when their quarterback had a season-ending injury after Florida State mowed down everyone that they played. Like, Florida State was getting it done. They mowed down everyone. And unfortunately, their quarterback got hurt, had a season-ending injury, and they got snuffed for the CFP altogether, which is wild, right? Would Florida State have been competitive and chasing the natty? Probably not, but they earned the right to be there. So give them their shot, give them a chance to be there, and maybe there'll be an asterisk next to their name in the CFP for that year, but don't take their opportunity from the CFP away. I believe the reasoning was, without their starting quarterback, this is a different team. That's wild. You can't just come in and just say, hey, well, we've decided that you're not going to be competitive, so we're not even give you a chance to compete for the national championship. Florida State, but I believe went on to lose that next game like 63-0 in their bowl game. And so, it almost proved that, no, they wouldn't have been competitive, but you stuck your hand in their cookie jar and you took away their prize based on what you thought was going to be the case. And that's undeserved, if you ask me, right? You don't have a team, have these student athletes run through their entire season, play their hearts out, and say, well, I don't think you're a very good team without your starting quarterback, so we're going to shut you down now. So then you move on to all the talking heads and of course, everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but so many people around the country and on the internet and wherever you look wants Notre Dame to join a conference. Well, Notre Dame should just join a conference. They should just join a conference. Why? Is it for backing? Because Notre Dame has its own backing. It backs itself. I challenge you to find one program in the entire country that has the brand, the notoriety that Notre Dame has. What backing do they need, right? Are we talking about backdoor handshakes? Are we talking about backdoor deals, right? Notre Dame doesn't want to play that way. They want to win on their own merit. And if we win, we should play. And if we lose, we shouldn't. And I would say that about any team, Is it about money? I don't think so. Does Notre Dame need the money? I mean, I didn't look at last year's CFP run and see what the numbers were, but while all these teams were having to share money with conferences and split dividends and things like that, Notre Dame got to keep all the money. So it's not about money. The alumni and the backers and everything, it's the money's there. The money's not an issue. So again, what reasons does Notre Dame have to join a conference? What guarantees do they get by joining a conference, right? Other than playing the same group of teams every year. Notre Dame has the luxury of being able to play anyone who comes their way, right? And so it's not like any one conference is just absolutely blowing everyone out of the water. For years, the SEC was the conference, right? The power conference. But they've taken a step back. They've taken a slide. And I have my thoughts on why that is, and I'll get to that here just a little bit. But right now, 1 and 2, well, before the championship game on Saturday, was Ohio State and IU. And honestly, probably deservedly so. And so Notre Dame being out, I'm rooting for IU to take the whole thing. I want to see the championship stay in Indiana. If it can't be us, why not them, right? And so, what guarantees would Notre Dame have from joining a conference? There are very few. I asked the question, where's Duke? Duke won out the ACC in their championship game. You can argue the ACC's tiebreaker process, and it kept Miami out and things like that. But I mean, why is there a tiebreaker necessary in the ACC for Miami, right? Duke are the ACC football champions in 2025. Done. It's a done deal. They're also not in the playoffs. And so by their own rule, the top 5 power conferences, which ACC is on that list of this year, the conference champions get a bid. Auto bid. Where's their auto bid? Duke's not playing in the CFP. So, there's some miscommunication, some misguidance, some smoke and mirrors. If you're asking me, it's entirely too subjective. And then you go down a laundry list of complaints about Notre Dame. They have handpicked schedules. Well, people want to play Notre Dame, and even teams that don't necessarily believe that they can beat Notre Dame, they want to play Notre Dame, right? Having that notoriety of Notre Dame coming to a stadium near you, right? Notre Dame travels well. Notre Dame could travel anywhere on this planet, and fans will travel. I wanted to go to the Ireland game back in 2020. If it weren't for COVID, that was my plan. Notre Dame travels well. And so people want to play Notre Dame. There's money there. Right? If you talk to people in hospitality at these schools, they'll tell you when Notre Dame comes, they make a ton of money. By far, the most money they make out of any game, because Notre Dame travels well. They spin well, and it's good for business, right? And so it's economics, it's transactional. You talk about strength of schedules. Like, who's in charge of the strength of schedule? These schedules are decided years in advance, 3, 5, 7 years in advance. Who knows what Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, JMU, Tulane, who knows what anybody's going to look like 5 and 7 years from now, especially when you throw in the NIL and transfer portal. Those two things have become the modern day equalizer for sports. Just look at the performance of the SEC over the last 5-10 years. They were incredibly dominant. Last time Notre Dame went to the national championship under Brian Kelly, hard stop. I never thought Brian Kelly was going to bring a national championship to Notre Dame. I just didn't. And he's proven that to be the case with LSU, but I digress. The last time we played a national championship before last year, we played against Alabama in the SEC, and we got smoked. We got outperformed. The game was over by halftime, and we bought that ticket and we paid for it. So, but you look at the SEC now. When you look at Alabama, some of the true Alabama fans that I know will say we don't deserve to be in the playoff this year. We suck. We're terrible. Alabama got rolled over on against Georgia this past weekend. Didn't score into the fourth quarter. That's not competitive. But Alabama's in, right? And so, would Notre Dame do any better? We'll never know, because Notre Dame wasn't scheduled to play Georgia this year. Maybe they would have met in the playoffs again this year. We saw how that went last year. Georgia was also favored last year, and except for Ohio State, we were able to pretty much roll everyone we played last year. So the NIL and the transfer portal have become the great equalizer, and so now teams are able to be super competitive. And I don't know how much, I haven't looked up how much in NIL Ohio State, for example, pays for their team, right? Because it's pay to play now. Let's not make any bones about it. I don't even know how much Notre Dame pays NIL money a year, but we are officially in the pay to play state, right? My understanding is that Notre Dame uses the transfer portal very conservatively, just to fill holes. And I don't know that the NIL, at least from the university, goes to a ton of money goes towards the student athletes. But I could be wrong. But my understanding is like last year's roster for Ohio State was exorbitant, right? And you look at picking on basketball because but then it's the only number that I know that sticks in my head. I believe that Kentucky basketball has a $22 million roster this year. $22 million for student athletes. So if that's not an equalizer, I don't know what is, because you'll have student athletes who say, you know what, I'll go play for ABC school because they're going to pay me $2.5 million to play next year. They don't care about winning. They don't care about the degree. They care about that 2.5 mil that was promised to them. And that in and of itself takes the sportsmanship and the athleticism out of the sport, because they're not doing it because they love the game. They're doing it because they love the output of the paycheck that's going to come from them playing the game. And I think that just cheapens the entire experience, not just for the student athlete, but for the fans as well. Quite honestly, there needs to be a new format. The one we have is too subjective. Teams 1 through 12 get in. No conference champion auto bids. You may end up with 4, or like this year, 5 SEC teams. But if 5 SEC teams deserve to be in the top 12, I don't have a problem with it. Same thing for the Big Ten. You got 3 in there now. So that right now, that's 8. That leaves 4 more teams. And if that's the way it is, then that's just the way it is. Sure, you can reward positions 1 through 4 with a bye for their accomplishment. But you play all season to get in, not just how you finish the season. What does the overall picture look like for the organization? The current format is far too subjective. Do we want the best 12 teams competing for championship every year? Or do we want the CFP to subjectively choose 5 to bid automatically and then use smoke and mirrors to determine who the other 7 are going to be? I listened to the interview from the chairman. He talked about how they were up until the middle of the night on Saturday and Sunday trying to pick these teams. Why is it so difficult? Because your data and your metrics don't allow for you to have a clear and discernible way to pick your field of teams. And that's crazy. The entire process needs to be transparent for the integrity of the entire thing, right? That way there's no question. No one can call ethics and morals into question. It's entirely, having a group of people, a committee in a hotel in the middle of the night, deciding on these things the morning of the release is wild. And then the latest thing, Notre Dame came out, was it 2 hours after the final ranking was released, and they declined to play in a bowl game. As a sports fan, I'll be honest, I don't care for the decision, right? I love to see my team play. I want to see them play. But as a Notre Dame fan, I get it. It sends a message. And the message that the CFP sent to Notre Dame was, we don't value you as a football program. And that message was sent. It was loud and it was clear. But the message the team sent back was, we are playing for a championship. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for consolation prizes. The message that the CFP doesn't value Notre Dame's football program is wild, because this team is better than last year's team. I'll debate anybody about it. This team was better than last year's team. And last year's team was a national champion runner-up. And so I really believe that Notre Dame was one of the few teams who could go in there and could win the entire thing. As much as I like Riley Leonard and all those guys who played last year, we left something on the table. I don't think this team would have done that. I think this team would have had a dog fight with anybody. All right, we're still talking football, but if you just back it up, right? No matter what your career, your job, or where you are in life, if you aren't valued, you should remove yourself and assess, right? Remove yourself and assess your situation. Those who value you and what you have to offer will show up, and they will show you that they value you through their actions. Words are hollow. What people do for you and how they show up for you will tell you so much more than the words they use to speak to you or about you. And don't get me wrong, it's great to have people championing for you in a room that you're not in, but it's the way that people show up for you in the several different ways is how you really show how you're valued, right? And so, you know, you value these teams by saying that, hey, if you want to be in a conference, if you want to win, be in a conference and win out your conference, and you can play. But that's not necessarily the case, right? You've got IU who won their conference and they jumped Ohio State. Alabama lost theirs and didn't move. Right? So where's the metrics? Where's the line? When does the line move? How does the line move? So far, there's no rhyme or reason to the process, right? And Notre Dame, Notre Dame not playing isn't necessarily about sour grapes. It sends a message. You don't get to move the goal line, and we will just be okay with it. Right? The players decided that if they weren't going to pursue the trophy, they were going to forego the bowl games. The bowl games are really just for viewership and money and to look towards next year, right? So, they could play in a bowl game and try to get the viewership and go get the money, or they can look toward next year. I was listening to someone earlier who said something about them not playing is a disservice to the seniors and the parents of the seniors and the cheerleaders and all this, right? And some of that may be true. To some degree, that's probably true. But I would caution everyone not to live their lives for other people, right? We get so stuck on trying to be who others want us to be that we lose ourselves in that process. And so this team decided that if we're not playing for a championship, then we're not going to go to a bowl game. We don't need the extra rep. Some of these guys are undoubtedly going to go to the NFL. I would love to see Jeremiah Love come back for another year and just absolutely smoke show next year. But, he's slated to be a first round draft pick. And so if he decides to declare, I don't blame the guy one bit, right? I get it. But these players have made a decision as a unit and decided that it's championship or bust for us. And part of me respects that, right? We're not looking for consolation prizes. Why would anyone tap dance and put on a show for someone who slighted them, right? This team was chasing the trophy and was one of the few programs who could actually pull it off this year. And that scared a lot of people. And I think that's why you have so many people who are so vocal against Notre Dame. It's not about them being an independent. It's not about them being a Catholic school. It's the fact that, the last couple of years have showed everyone, hey, this team is for real. Under the guidance of Marcus Freeman, this team can and will win games. And I do believe that Marcus Freeman will bring a championship to Notre Dame. Will bring a championship to my hometown of South Bend. And that scares people because then they won't have the argument of when was the last time you won a championship. So I get it. Last year, a lot of people I know were excited for Notre Dame making the championship game. And so was I. I was incredibly excited. A lot of people even bought merchandise to commemorate the accomplishments through all the bowls. And, people bought tickets to go to the games and they bought the shirts and the hats. I didn't buy one article of clothing to commemorate. And honestly, the reason is because the only thing I would have been happy with was merchandise acknowledging them as national champions. And that's just my take on it. I don't want an Orange Bowl hat. I don't want any of this other stuff. I don't want an All-State Bowl hat. I want a hat that says Notre Dame national champions and not just the box of hats that were supposed to go to third world countries and shirts and hats to go to third world countries to clothe the folks there. I wanted to be able to proudly wear something that said my team is of champions, and that wasn't our reality. So I didn't buy anything. Right? They fell short, so I abstained. Don't get me wrong. I'm proud of last year's team, but I'm not celebrating first runner-up. Right? I'm not about the participation trophies. You win or you lose, and that's the way I view it. At least in sports, there may be some areas of life where I don't necessarily feel that way, but in sports, that's how I feel. So for me, their message of not going into a bowl game is the exact same thing to me. We're not chasing first loser. We want to be winners. And the fact that playing a game essentially and equated to nothing more than bragging rights against the team, assuming they won against whatever team they were slated to play. Um, they're not here looking for bragging rights. They're looking for championships. And so now they have an opportunity to reconvene. I guarantee you they have been practicing. They've been getting it done, and they will continue to do as much. Right? They had a bang up recruiting season, 27 recruits. Was it 20 of them or 4 and 5-star recruits? Most of them are graduating in December and be on campus in January. Next year's looking bright, right? Obviously, make no promises because I don't play for Notre Dame. I'm not a coach. I'm not a student athlete. I don't have any inside information, but the future's bright. People want to be here. People want to play. As a sports fan, I'm disappointed that I've watched my last Notre Dame game of this season. As a Notre Dame fan, I'm proud of my team for standing on principle. I understand some of the reasoning behind why they did what they did. And again, they weren't being valued. They knew they weren't being valued. And instead of tap dancing for the CFP, they decided, you know what? I'm out. We'll go ahead and focus on next year. We'll give it another run and we'll bring our A game next year. Hopefully next year, they don't leave it to chance. They don't lose the games that they should win, and they won't put themselves in a position where people have to go, I don't know, it's kind of close. Next year, hopefully it's undeniable that they deserve to be where they are. And hopefully next year we'll have a new format to where we look at the rankings week after week after week, and we can follow those rankings and know that at the end of the day, 1 through 12 are the ones who play. Let me know what you think in the comments.